So last night, as the sun was going down, I decided to go for a walk around my neighborhood because I've had a head cold for a couple days, almost a week now, so I haven't really been moving a whole lot. Just been trying to rest, and then I also just wanted some fresh air too to go along with that, and so it's probably on like 4 o'clock because the time just changed and it gets darker way sooner again. I'm going up the neighborhood and there is just a swath of what I at first thought were vultures, just the way that they were hovering and circling around the neighborhood. They didn't have anywhere to necessarily go, but they kept sticking around here as if this area was holding something for them, or at least just keeping their interest. But that wasn't the case. I eventually figured out they weren't vultures. Then I went and realized that they were more ravens than crows, and I think you can tell because of just how big they are. Crows are not known for their size. The raven is not really known at all because you can't really quoteth the raven about anything, so it's tough to really learn a lot about what it is they are. It's funny. My neighborhood, it's kind of farcical in how it's designed, just because the geography so easily can determine the social status of the people who live around there. So, like the people who live in the lower elevations of where I am are going to be a lot more of your poorer, kind of working class people. And then as you move up the hills, you start getting into these more affluent communities, these houses that have more intricate architecture. Some may be blends of like Danish cabin building or these other assimilations of like German and Dutch and whatever. There's definitely money where then the thought can go in, and you get houses that are therefore illustrative of that wealth. But that's where the Ravens were going. They moved from these lower areas of our neighborhood and then flew towards these barren trees that were dividing one section of the neighborhood from another. And that was where the ravens decided to roost. They were just sitting atop these trees in front of all of these incredibly wealthy houses, staring down. And it felt like one of those weird moments where the universe is itself like a an emotional performance. Like just that very instance unfolding before you has such a cinematic quality to it that you almost feel like it's emblematic of a greater thing than just you being in this point in time. It's almost like your environment is also around you, instructing how you should feel about this time, or at least just relating in some way or creating something that feels related to where you're at. Bit of a long winding story, but I just it felt so akin to just the place I've been at. This video is gonna be more political than a lot of my others, so I understand if you want to hop off the train right now. I would encourage you at some point, if you are interested in hearing more about what I have to say, to revisit this when you're in a better place, because I understand that you might not be equipped to handle certain things at certain times, but that doesn't mean that we should always run from these potentially negative spaces, at least just for our thoughts, because we're a lot more powerful than our thoughts in most, if not all, cases. But it's also helpful to just be in a good headspace when you're going into matters that have a lot more baggage than you might think. I'm an American, if that's not clear by now, and so, like many people, politics has just been on my mind for the last week or so, much more heavily than usual. And a lot of just recalibrating and reorientating about where it is the world is going. Because, many people have already felt, I'd even say back to like 2010, just a level of unease that the bottom is starting to tilt, or it's starting to crater. And a lot of people are trying to figure out how do I avoid this? How do I best prepare myself for this? It's been teetering at this point for almost over a decade, and all of that's been manifesting in just amplified political resentment from both sides of the political spectrum. And yet, all that has materialized to now this moment where we are facing an administration that, if true to their word, which, given most presidential administrations, is an acceptable thing to apply, maybe naive still in this scenario, but if this administration sticks to their word about what it is that they want to do and their vision for what America should be, then the next 4 years are going to be hard for a lot of people. There are going to be some people who benefit from this, and there are going to be some people who don't have any care for some of this. And my only hope is that you don't necessarily wait until trouble comes knocking to you, because inside of this system, we are all the next block to be expended in some way, and that's where we have to look out for each other on this bottom rung of society. But that aside, and one thing that disappoints me with just saying that is there are groups of people who are so on board the basically like the fantasy football ride of politics. There are some people who will hear what I say and they cannot wait to dehumanize me in whatever capacity, to yell about wanting to drink my tears, of trying to put me down and make me feel weak to them because my ideological representation is not currently the hegemonic power inside of the state. Like all of these things that I feel are so corrosive, not only to government itself, but to society as a whole. And like these people who want to just keep doing victory lap after victory lap of an administration that, all things considered, has the potential to do tremendous harm. You're not going to escape that inside of an office like the White House. Like I'm not naive enough to think that, all saints are rulers of the world. You do not rule the world as a saint. But I can't help but just feel sad at how some people are able to swallow so much and force a blind eye onto the potential harms that can happen to people who are of lesser means. If these tariffs really come into play and inflation starts running rampant as a result, that's going to be incredibly impactful, not even to just the lower rung, but even the middle rung of people. Deportations, that's going to fluster economies all across the country. You can see that also have an impact then on food prices and these other industries, which then also has the potential to make inflation run wild. You have these war hawks who are now starting to be put into the cabinet, at least in the nomination process, and just begs the question of what exactly this whole geopolitical struggle since the Cold War has been bubbling too. And yeah, I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on. And I know that there are many people who, if they even voted for the president-elect, share these feelings of unease too. It's a tumultuous political time, and the thing that I feel the saddest about is that we can't find that bridge, or we choose not to find that bridge, because the political consequences of what is happening, on either end of the spectrum, carries with it such moral baggage of, voting for a person like the president-elect means that you're putting aside a lot of ethical issues, which granted, presidents of the past also have their own fair share of ethical issues as well, of someone who very clearly does not care about the people around him, uses the power to however it benefits him. All of these character flaws are swallowed as a result of some ideological means to an end. Like, I'm growing more and more disillusioned inside of all of this too, of how to evaluate American politics in a functional way. And I feel like many people are also feeling this, just that sense of despair of the powers moving in a direction where it could uproot everything you have built and everything that you've tried to cultivate, families you've tried to nurture, relationships, goals in life, all these types of things. They're all at the behest of a few select powers, and that creates a natural unease. That goes back to this growing political resentment many people are facing. And it also brings up an argument many people on the left make, where there are a lot more issues that bring us together than divide us. Case in point, inside of all of this, you have states like Missouri passing a heightened minimum wage of $15. That doesn't necessarily save people from destitution, but it's progress that is in a good direction for the majority of people. And that's inside of a fairly conservative state. You have a lot of issues where trying to uplift the working class, which is the bulk of people inside of America, is just, it's good policy. And yet you have Republicans who for a long time were not ever the heralders of the working class. Mainly, they were the uplifters of the people who have already made it through, of your classes of people who escaped poverty, and now they have assets, and now they want to protect them. And in the ongoing pursuit of protecting that, that's where they've become more beholden to corporate interests. It's been that way since the 1980s. With Citizens United, you start seeing the Democrats starting to play inside of that game too, and a lot of that leads to this confounding campaign that Kamala Harris runs as the impromptu Democratic nominee, where she continuously can't set her foot onto a solid position because the voices around her, who all come from this 1980s era of America and political thinking, keep trying to push her in these compromising directions, as opposed to giving the Democrats any sense of identity that isn't just, we'll keep catering to the ideological other side. They instead choose not to present an ideological other side. They just mold themselves into a lighter version of what is now the quote-unquote popular majority. Things are still very tight inside of, the House of Reps, even the Senate. And on top of that, in the presidential race, it was fairly tight even down to the popular vote, just a couple million votes, which in the scheme of America is a big number, is not really that big a number. So what does this all mean? Why am I outlining all this and all this frustration. I think for one, hopefully to share with other people that I'm feeling things you might be feeling, you might be thinking, frustrations you might be having. I also too just want to offer I don't know if it's irresponsible to like want to feel hopeful, because like being naive in many cases is how the rug gets swept from under you. But that also is the underlying fear that fuels a lot of conservative ideology of people who are trying so hard to protect themselves that they at all costs will push anything away just to protect themselves. And that feels like the core struggle of what society is right now. And it's unfolding in the political space of these communities of people shrinking or isolating to where then a society is no longer a collection of people working together, but rather just a group of individuals each pursuing their own purpose, and that somehow being what rises to the top or whatever. I don't necessarily know. It's this battle between the individual and the community. And I feel hopeful that what has happened inside of this election has woken some people up. Maybe not a lot, maybe not everybody, but I have hope that people are going to be more active about what it is that they want and how it is that they get it. And I mean, that's how I'm trying to act too inside of this. You know, I feel that what pushes a lot of people into accepting these more extreme ideas is just the lack of outreach between people who have differing worldviews. Some of that is self-imposed by people in that sector. You have that on the left as well. The refusal to try and hear another side, but from my experience, a majority of people are incredibly sensible, and they have empathy and care, and they'll listen to you. They might not change their mind, but they can at least build some sense of respect for you. And maybe that's a naive thing to believe too. I'm speaking purely from just my small town experience. It might be a lot worse than I'm saying, and in which case I don't want to like give false hope, but I don't know what function being cynical about all of this really has. Like all it's ever done for me is mire me in my own frustration and really rob me of any feeling that I can take any action that feels fulfilling for me or feels potentially contributive to the people around me or helpful to other people, maybe even beyond me. Cynicism is one of the greatest poisons, I think, to humanity. But, you know, like a lot of things too, it's just in the amount. You can have a healthy amount of cynicism, and it's necessary inside of a world that is trying to exploit you in numerous directions. But when you're inundated with all of that, and you're producing a quote unquote reasonable amount of cynicism as a result, then you're just inundated with that feeling of just doubt and hesitation and not wanting to engage, and none of that is fruitful to the endeavor of anything. It's inhibiting. It's an impedance on anybody wanting to try and make something inside of this world. And so this is the last thing I want to talk about, and why I feel okay getting political on this channel. Beyond that, this is just my channel and me voicing my thoughts. Like, I'd probably share this stuff no matter what, but I want people to just, I want people to think about this, because not only is, engaging with your local communities, getting to know your neighbors and all these types of things, not only does that have grand political consequences down the road, and also just, personal fulfillment as well, in terms of how you feel as a contributor to the area you live in, and your feeling of worth as a result of that. We also have to really make the best of ourselves, and it's a precarious thing, because you have so many people on the internet and around the world trying to sell you what the answer is. There are a lot of people who are like, for you to maximize yourself, you need to join the Jehovah's Witnesses. Or to maximize yourself, you need to start getting B12 vaccines, or God knows what. And granted, everyone has their own avenue. I'm not saying this with any judgment as to which way you go, but it goes into that healthy cynicism too of, I don't necessarily know if that is where I'm supposed to be. But, I mean, if something relates, something relates. All of this comes into just, we have to really invest in ourselves. We really have to believe in ourselves and believe that we're worthy of something. That has to be inherent. I went for a really long time in my life feeling that inside of this capitalist structure, at any point, the world would be happy that I died, because I would be less of an expense, and on top of that, whatever I was producing, it just deemed unnecessary anyway. And that there was probably the absolute worst of my cynicism. The only way that I broke out of that is by just recognizing that I'm not beholden to that system. If anything, that system is to be beholden to me, because I am alive, I am contributing, I am a part of this system. It is not built to work me, it's built to work for me. And so basically all that is to say is we have more agency than we might think. Part of that comes from things like collective action, of community building. If you work at a place where you have a bunch of employees that feel like they aren't getting a fair wage, you can unionize. Like, we have the capability to stand up for ourselves and make the things that we have constructed inside of this society work for us. That's what the fucking rich are doing anyway, with how these elections go and the policies passed and what it is that they are trying to perpetuate. They are trying to perpetuate their own goals, and a lot of them are antithetical to the everyday man. And so we have to believe that we're worth that. We have to believe that we are worth investing in whatever capacity that is. And we have to respect ourselves too, where if we feel like we're going really hard and we need to take a break, we feel that we're worthy of that break because it helps us go harder down the road, or helps us keep going down the road. All of that, I feel, also ties into a point that I heard Henry Giroux make, funnily enough, in an interview he had with Julian Casablancas, where they talk about art inside of the world. Because there are a lot of people, especially in the last 10 years, who have spouted things like, oh, I don't like when a TV show gets political. I don't like when this gets political, or when that gets political. And the unfortunate truth to share with those people is that art is political always. And as Henry Giroux put it,
and that's why it's so amazing that a band like yours I mean, can have the following that it has because it pushes against that grain. Even when it's not directly political, it is political because it stretches the imagination. That's political to me. I hate orthodoxy. I hate political purity. I want to see people who are constantly exhibit two things: a sense of self-reflection and a compassion for others. That's the key.
When we engage with art and we engage with our imaginations, it allows us to start seeing what is beyond the material world. And only in being able to do that have we been able to achieve a lot of what we have as a civilization. When we imagine things, we think we can put this thing and this thing together, and all of a sudden we have a computer, or to think we can go to the moon, and then you hire Stanley Kubrick to build an elaborate set, or whatever the hell you believe. The imagination is the strongest tool that humans possess, at least until AI decides to take over. And so what that means then is the art that we choose to engage with, and even choosing to engage with art to begin with, is necessary. It's a necessary part of society because art is meant to reflect a moment in time. A lot of times it's reflective of the current moment, and it's able to articulate things in ways because it speaks to emotions that, like simple book learning and a lot of things don't necessarily speak to. It's a lot more informative of what the human soul is supposed to be and how that can function inside of something like a society, or imagining what a society would be if that is what we catered to the strongest as opposed to corporate interest. Like all of art in that way, helping us build our imaginations and push ourselves to see beyond what it is that we're able to see because other people are sharing their experiences and whatnot. That's the strongest political tool that has ever been invented. And as long as we can keep dreaming, and as long as we can keep thinking about what it is to be a person and all these types of things, I feel the much better we will be as a people to escape these tropes of xenophobia and of all these other scapegoats that are thrown into political discourse as a smokescreen for what it is the main interest of these parties is to implement. I don't think the grammar of that sentence was good, but the point stands. My hope is that this is such a whiplash for people that they don't cower to despair, that it's so strong, for lack of a better term, that they're forced into action. And it's not a great place to be. I don't wish that was the place we were in now, but if it's the option to cower or fight, I'm happy to see that people are ready to fight and they're willing to fight and defend these things that are good and make sure that the administration that's coming in does not deteriorate the system as harshly as many indicators show they are capable. But that also comes not from just trusting other people are taking that action, but it comes from us as well, inside of the communities that we live in, of just engaging with people, talking with people, doing our best to just try and connect with one another. Even if, our politics are going to be different, the more that you isolate people, the more that they are going to stretch deeper into their own echo chamber and into that zeitgeist of hatred and fear, because that's where they feel predisposed to. People will not feel that if they feel welcomed into something. And, maybe this is all hopeful, wishful thinking. I feel it's the only thing that is left inside of this world as it stands now. But because of the fight back I'm seeing from so many people, and even inside of myself, a feeling of just being prepared to put my head down and try and push the world in the direction that I feel is the moral right. Yeah, I feel somewhat hopeful. I'm uneasy. I think a lot of people are uneasy, but I'm done cowering to this fear. I feel many people should feel the same. We are a country that's more united than we think. We just have to figure out how we can stop isolating these people and start creating these communities and making people feel welcomed and encouraged to be a greater version of themselves than just someone who can accumulate capital and endlessly accumulate capital as if that is the pursuit of the human spirit. And on top of that, we need to make sure that we are not turning a blind eye to art and the art that people are making. And in that way, too, being another way we can build these communities and just try and inspire people and empower people to want to be the versions of themselves that they dream they can be, and maybe they don't allow themselves to. No political administration should ever hinder that, and we can't let them either. And so that's it. I genuinely hope the next 4 years are not as destructive as they seem already. But we also just have to take the punches as they come. Think of the people in worse situations, the people in poverty, your marginalized communities. Really help your trans friends. Reach out to them. Let them know that they have safe spaces too. Because if things really come into fruition, as this administration has touted, it's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people. And the hope, too, is that if they try to do a lot of these things and the majority of people feel that discomfort, that hopefully that can also be an instrument for great change. And that also kind of is what leaves me with a semblance of hope, too. And I feel sad that I have to qualify all of my hope because of just where we are as a society and how cynical so many people are, that to be hopeful is to be foolish. And I mean, I don't know. If the fool can be happy, why shouldn't I? That's also kind of the approach that I want to take, because I am not dealing with the grave responsibilities that our public officials are and that they should be treating with proper credence and whatnot. But I don't know. Nothing is made from misery. Like, misery is just it's its own space that is all consuming if you let it be, and it's the closest to death I have ever felt. And so there's really no need to go back there. We always have a chance to do something. It's harder for some people than it is others. I'm an incredibly privileged person, and I recognize that, and so maybe I'm afforded more of this hope and whatnot. But I just, yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I hope that I just hope it's not as bad as we think. Along with that, though, I know it won't be as bad as we think, because we can stand up for ourselves and we can speak out and we can build coalitions to try and protect ourselves, because that's, at the end of the day, what societal politics are. And we have to remember that, especially on a local level, because that's where you're going to feel a bulk of this change. You'll feel some of it on a state level. You'll even feel some on a federal, but just being involved in your community is incredibly important, and that's something that I am especially going to be devoting time to. Just seeing the direction that things are heading at this moment, because what else is there to do? I don't know. And I don't know that there's really an answer to that. I hope you have a good day. You're having a good day. Your day can get better. And that we get through this together. This election shouldn't be a celebration for anybody. It shouldn't be a funeral for anybody. Ideally, a political election doesn't have those consequences. This one, is going to have that impact on people's lives. And we just have to be there for each other. I want to have hope.